We live in a world that celebrates outgoing personalities, from the constant social media posts to the workplace that equates extroversion with leadership potential. But what if I told you there was another way to not just cope as an introvert, but to thrive? In this video, I'll be sharing 5 ways that you can thrive as an introvert in an extroverted world. Hello, my name is Daniel and I help introverted professionals who are struggling with confidence and communication skills advance in their career. I've worked with over 300 clients now, trained global companies, and I'm a proud introvert myself. On this channel, we'll be speaking about introversion and communication skills. So please go ahead and give me a subscribe. The first way that you can learn to thrive as an introvert is to learn more about yourself. Before I knew I was an introvert, I used to really struggle around people. I would constantly wonder why I wasn't outgoing. At work, I'd be amongst my colleagues and I just didn't seem to be the person who could speak up in a group or who could really command that attention. So it led me to believe that there was something wrong with me. So what I did for many years is I tried to be more outgoing because I thought that this was the only way. So I'd go into situations and I'd try and fake it and I'd try and mimic those who had more of an outgoing personality, but it just never worked. And it actually had the opposite effect of what I wanted. I wanted to become more confident and more outgoing, but the more I tried to strive for this, the more it knocked my own self-confidence, and the more I started to hate myself. I used to start to wonder why I was born this way and why I wasn't kind of this outgoing, charismatic character. But when I started to learn about introversion, things started to change. I went on a journey of really understanding myself and my introversion. I learned that introversion is about where you get your energy from. When introverts are amongst people, we are energy drains. So I went on a journey to learn more about myself and to really understand what introversion is and what it isn't. And during this time, I started to learn that introversion isn't a fault and that it can actually be a huge strength. And this resulted in me no longer feeling the need to be more outgoing, no longer feeling the need to compare myself with extroverted individuals, which meant that I could go into situations without that need to perform or to be something I wasn't. And it gave me the opportunity to use all that time and energy that I was spent wishing I was someone else to put it into something useful, like developing myself, working on my skills, and leading more into the person I wanted to become. So the best way to start to understand your introversion better is to start reading up on what introversion is. A lot of the time people think introversion means that you're socially anxious or that you're not confident, and that's what society teaches us. So we feel that in order to develop, we must become more outgoing. But some of us are just not outgoing. And a great way to learn about your introversion, as I said, is to read, but is also to take a personality test. A great test to take is the MBTI, and this is the best way to learn about your introversion. It helps categorize it, and once you understand it, you can learn how to manage your stress and how to deal with different situations. The second way to really learn more about yourself is to get into a journaling practice. What I like to do is at the start of each day and midday and in the evening is to just journal my thoughts. How do I feel that day? What emotions are coming up? How I'm reacting to certain situations? How I'm reacting to different people? And what this does is it can help raise your awareness and gain a better understanding of who you are and how you react to different situations. But learning about yourself is all about becoming more aware of who you are. The first step to building confidence and to developing yourself is awareness. And as an introvert, if you're not aware of your introversion, you'll probably be stuck in that cycle of, I need to be more outgoing, because that's what society teaches us to be. The second way to learning how to thrive as an introvert is learning how to manage your energy. Introverts typically have a limited amount of energy, which means that when we're in social situations, we can start to feel drained. So in order to recharge, we then need to go and spend time alone. Whereas someone who is more extroverted will actually gain their energy from being around people. We're also more sensitive to stimuli such as large crowds, loud noises, and prolonged conversations, which means that this can all lead to our energy being depleted. And if we don't manage this, we can actually cause burnout. But again, this links back to the first point of learning more about yourself. If you don't understand your introversion, what you may do, what I did for many years, was constantly push yourself to go to things. So you go to back-to-back social events, you say yes to everything, and sometimes you might not even want to go places, but you feel guilty for saying no. I remember there was a time where every weekend I'd be saying yes to social events, I'd be saying yes to family events, and at the end of it I'd just feel totally burnt out. And then I'd have work the next week where again I'd be amongst people, and I was just constantly in this cycle of feeling stressed and burnt out. So what you need to do is learn how to plan and prioritize your energy. So how this might look, for example, you've got a social event with your family coming up on the Friday, and one of your colleagues asks you if you want to go out on the Saturday. But you know that by saying yes to both the thing on the Friday and the thing on the Saturday, you're going to lead yourself to feeling mentally drained. So what that could look like is you saying yes to the family event on the Friday, and then arranging the social event with your colleague maybe for the next weekend, so that you're giving yourself space in between social activity. It's really important that you structure downtime and even scheduling it in your calendar. So if you've got an event coming up, if you have to go somewhere, making sure that you have some time to yourself. And of course, many of you probably have really busy lives, you might have families, so maybe you can't have a full day to yourself, but even just an hour or two scheduled in the calendar, and speak to your partner or whoever it is around you and explain to them, it's really important that I have this time scheduled in, and use that time to really recharge your energy and do something you enjoy. So it could be going for a walk, could be reading a book, it could be, sitting down, having a nice cup of tea or coffee. I would avoid using that time just sat on social media, because I don't know about you, but after spending time just scrolling, it can actually leave you feeling even more tired and even more stressed. So try and not use your phone during this time. The third way to thrive as an introvert is learning how to deal with negative comments. Throughout my life, I've had to deal with constant comments about you're too quiet, you're lacking enthusiasm, you don't seem energetic enough. And these comments used to really hurt me. I remember in the workplace, managers would say, you're too quiet. And what happens is when you get enough of these comments over the years, you start really developing low self-esteem, and you start to think that I need to become louder to be accepted. But when I started to learn about my introversion, I started to understand that I wasn't necessarily quiet. I was quiet in a group of people, but one-to-one, I really thrived. So it's about defining what quietness even means. It means quiet in a big group of people I don't know, then yeah, I'm quiet. But in a one-to-one, that's not always the case. What people often say is, don't let those comments bother you, or just ignore them. But it's difficult to do that, especially when you've heard them all of your life. So what I like to do when I receive these comments, and I recommend my clients doing the same, is instead of just trying to brush them off, learning to just sit with that emotion, recognize what's coming up. Maybe you're feeling sad, maybe you're feeling frustrated, and just allowing yourself time to process that and to be okay with that negative comment impacting you. But then what we need to do from that is to not dive too deep into the comment. So to not look for things like, oh, what did they mean by that? And look at other situations. The first thing, recognize that it hurt you, but then think, how can I just move on from this? Recognizing that we can't control other people's comments. Even in the last year, I've been places and people have made a comment, oh, you seem quite quiet, are you okay? But in the past, that would have impacted me for weeks. But now, it hurts a little bit still, but I recognize that it's a comment, it hurts, but I can't control what this person says. I can only control how I react to it moving forward. So it's really important to understand that people have their own perception of the world, and we do live in a world that favors those more extroverted. So the person who's made this comment has just grew up in an environment often just like us. And there are a few ways that you can respond to these comments. The first way is you can educate the person. You can even say, I'm an introvert I'm not necessarily quiet. I prefer to listen. It takes me time to process things. I need to think a bit deeper, or my energy gets depleted when I'm around people, and just educate them. Of course, some people don't want to be educated. I've had managers in the past that just give these comments. They don't give any feedback on how to move forward or how to do this. They just give you the comment and that's it. Another thing you can do, and what I often do now, is own it. So if someone says you're quiet, rather than saying, oh, I'm not quiet, say, yeah, I am quiet. What I like to say is, yeah, I'm quiet in a group, especially when I don't know people, because I'm taking time to really listen. But on a one-to-one, I love engaging and going deeper. I personally don't think that, especially in the workplace, that people should be given comments like you're too quiet, because all it does is it knocks the person's confidence, and we're assuming that quietness is a bad thing when it's not. Number 4, setting clear boundaries. And this relates a lot to my previous point on managing your energy. So what are boundaries? Boundaries are a set of principles and rules that you live by. As I described earlier, I used to say yes to everything. So I'd be at work and I'd be very busy, and my manager would say, can you take on this? Can you do this? And I'd just say yes. Outside of work, people would ask for help. And even if I had a lot going on, I'd just say yes to everything because I had no boundaries in my life. So it's important to remember that you don't have to say yes to everything. You can say no. How to set boundaries then? I like to have clear boundaries. So for example, it could look like every morning between 7 and 8 a.m. that's spent me going on a walk, going to the gym. And if people try to contact me during that time, that's my time. Of course, there's exceptions and things coming up in life. Another boundary could be I always finish work by 6 p.m. It could be I never check my emails after 8 p.m. It could be when I don't do back-to-back meetings. Whatever is appropriate within your life. But it can be helpful just taking some time, maybe even writing out 5 boundaries that you can start implementing. Because it's easier when you've got the boundaries in place to then stick to them rather than just kind of keeping them floating in the air. One of the most important things you also need to do is communicate with people around you. I'm an introvert, my wife is more introverted as well, so that has made my life easier. However, I've worked with many clients who are introverted, but their partner is very extroverted. So they're constantly wanting them to attend every social event with them. They're constantly wanting them to go and meet the other partner's friends and constantly do things like that. But this is because they are extroverted and they gain energy from being around people. So they don't realize that when we're more introverted, we gain energy from being alone. So it's really important to communicate your needs with people. So as I said, if you've got, say, a wedding coming up on the Saturday, it's really important to speak to your partner and say, right, we've got the wedding on the Saturday, but on the Sunday, I want a day to myself or a morning to myself where I can practice some self-care and I can recover from that event. Because you know that these social events can leave you feeling drained for sometimes a couple of days after it. Number 5, learning to adapt in your way. As an introvert, what I used to do was avoid situations that I didn't like. So I'd avoid networking, I'd avoid group situations, I'd avoid, social events if I didn't know people. And the reason I avoided them was because I thought in order to do them, I had to be outgoing. And because I wasn't, it was easier just to stay at home. But what that does, that can really start to impact your confidence because it can start creating a cycle of, I can't do this, and then I'm not good enough, so I should avoid it. And you know that the more you avoid things, the bigger they become in your head. So I started to learn to adapt to different situations. So an example of this could be attending social events where I didn't know people. Instead of avoiding them completely, I'd maybe schedule like a few a month. Maybe one every second Saturday. And instead of going into these events thinking that I need to be loud, I need to be outgoing, I went in with the mindset of I'm going to go in as myself, but also I'm going to make an effort to connect with people as my introverted self. And this looked like me going into a group setting and focusing on really listening to people instead of worrying about I need to speak, I need to be more outgoing, am I being too quiet? Really just focus on listening to people. Focusing as well on building one-to-one relationships within that group. What introverts do really well is they can go deeper. We prefer having deeper, more meaningful relationships, conversations. So I started to lean more into that within the group setting. So as a whole, I probably was still one of the quieter ones in the group, but I knew that after that event, I could at least say that I had 2 or 3 really deep conversations with people. And what I did there is I faced a situation that was uncomfortable for me, but I learned to adapt. Whereas in the past, I would have either went there and thinking I need to be outgoing, I need to be really extroverted, or I would have avoided it completely. But what I did was adapt and learn how to lean more into my introverted strengths. This doesn't mean it's comfortable either. You still have to be able to face challenging situations and face those moments of fear. When your mind's saying, just turn away and go back home, you've got to realize that that's fear speaking. And whilst we're speaking about social situations, I have a weekly newsletter every Wednesday where I share tips for introverted professionals who are struggling socially at work, and I go into more depth on how to feel more confident socially and advance your communication skills. So I'll put the link below. But it's really important to remember, as an introvert, you can do all the things that you want to do, whether that be public speaking, networking, socializing, advancing in your career, but you just have to find different ways to adapt. The traditional way to be more outgoing, that won't work with us. I used to think being an introvert was a huge weakness, but now I see it as a huge strength. I want you to learn to celebrate your introversion in a world that is always going to encourage you to be more extroverted. I hope you found this video useful. Please be sure to give me a like and subscribe. I'd love to hear as well which point resonated with you the most. Please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.